Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the Long Term Podcast. I'm your host, Advin Villa. Today, we have dual sports athlete. She plays rugby and wrestles, and University of Alberta psychology student, Maria Sawiak. We will discuss being content with what you have, embracing new opportunities, and embracing failures. I am very excited for this episode. Maria is a very hardworking individual, and at such a young age, she has accomplished a great deal of things. And yeah, this is a phenomenal conversation. Can't wait for all of you to hear it. Everyone, welcome. Awesome. There we go.
What do you edit it on?
Adobe Audition.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So you are.
Have you used that software?
No, I used to just play around with GarageBand a lot.
Oh yeah.
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 So
sweet. Is that all comfortable? And
I think so. Yeah. I'll try and stay close to the mic the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. If you forget, it's okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the Long Term Podcast. Yeah. Maria Sawiak. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you pronounced that right.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am 22. I'm going into my 5th year of university next year.
You have done a lot for a 22-year-old.
Thanks.
Truly. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah.
I try.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going into my 4th year of eligibility, if you're counting COVID, for rugby. And then my 2nd year competing for wrestling at the U of A.
Okay. So
yeah.
With wrestling, you had told me that you had recently joined it. Okay. So can you tell me the story onto how that came out to
for
be?
Sure. So for rugby, I've been competing, I don't know, most of my life, right? So I started when I was 12 years old, and then I kind of worked all the way up. So university made a lot of sense. Wrestling, it was always kind of something I wanted to do. In high school, I tried a lot of different sports, anywhere from curling to handball to basketball, right? I sucked at volleyball, so never volleyball. And wrestling was something I wanted to do. In my 2nd year of university, I contacted the varsity coach and pretty much just asked if I could join a couple practices, because I knew 1 or 2 people on the team, and I figured why not, right? And he let me essentially walk on the team, which was really cool. And it became a little bit like a full-time job. It's 30 hours of training a week, so it's a little bit crazy. And most of them are at 6 a.m. And the 3rd day I joined, they went to a camp in Calgary, so there was quite a bit of exposure there immediately. But I loved the community that was there, and I loved the team atmosphere and just the idea of pushing yourself to your breaking point, pretty much. And it was something a lot different than rugby, for sure.
Well, and that's on top of rugby and on top of school and on top of research. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're starting your master's program in January after your degree.
Yeah,
okay?
I am.
How do you have time for any of this? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel if you like doing things, you kind of make time, right? So if you want to do something, then you can generally if you can schedule yourself maybe to your breaking point, maybe it's a little bit nuts at times, right? But if you can fit it in, generally there's enough hours in the day for it.
Yeah.
Right?
If you truly want it, then you're going to find a way.
Yeah. If there's a will, there's a way, sort of
thing. There's a will, there's a way. Yeah. So let's talk about being happy with what you have.
Okay.
How do you find contentment in your daily life while balancing the demands of being a dual sport athlete and a psychology student?
Oh, okay. I know I wrote my answer down, but now I completely forgot what I said. I like finding joy in like the little moments. So that's not only in like doing the sports or like studying for school, but enjoying all the parts of your day that you could otherwise choose not to enjoy, right? So like if you're doing sprints kind of suck, right? Especially if someone's like, okay, now you have to do 100 sprints there and back after like 2 hours of training and you're kind of dead. You can look at it like one of two ways. You can look at it like, oh my God, like, why the fuck do I have to do this? Or you can look at it kind of as I'm choosing to be here, right? And I get the opportunity to be here, right? The fact that I'm even here is amazing. And you do it, maybe you throw up, right? But after you do it, you're like, oh my God, like I was just able to do 100 sprints, right? And then generally you have a community of people around you that also did the same thing and also pushed themselves to the same extreme. So they get it, right? And then you build that sort of connection with those around you. But that's like in everything. You can hate walking to the store. You can be like, oh my God, it's a beautiful day. Like there's some birds chirping. I don't even know. Maybe not if it's like pouring or like snowing in May, but generally like there's little moments that you can take from every experience.
I was reading this book called Atomic Habits, and in the book, it talked about two types of people in the same situation. They're in a wheelchair, just they aren't able to walk, so they need assistance. And the one person in that, they view that wheelchair as something that's holding them back. I wish I could walk. I wish I could stand up. Look at all these people. They're looking down on me. It is something that is looked down upon. I am handicapped. The other person views it as, this wheelchair liberates me. I can engage in the daily activities without burdening other people. I am not a cripple. Had I been born 400 years ago, whenever wheelchairs didn't exist, I'd be crawling on the floor and there'd be someone having to carry me all this time. It really depends, hey? Because when you show up to this practice, whether it be rugby, whether it be to your research, whether it be to your commitments, you could look at it as, I have to do this. I have to go to school. I have to meet up with my teammates and actually practice. This is hard work. Or you could go, I get this opportunity to be able to be a part of the University of Alberta team, to be able to hone in on my experience and cultivate an atmosphere where we're all uplifting everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like, same thing could be kind of said about a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, well, I kind of want to chat with people, but I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing. So I'm not going to put anything online or put myself out there, but like you still do it, right?
Yeah, so, it's just taking that leap of faith. Right? Yeah. Like going to the coach, emailing that professor to get into the research or to be a part of that team. There's that risk you're willing to take, hey? Of rejection, of judgments, of that negativity if it doesn't pan out.
Well, I mean, like in a lot of ways, let's say, I don't know, let's say like I email the prof, right? And they don't let me into the lab that I wanted to like get some experience in, for example, or like I emailed my coach and he said, actually, no, like we don't take walk-ons on the team, or maybe that's a stupid idea because everyone needs to train with each other. And if someone comes in and they know nothing, you're not really helping out the athletes that have already been putting in the time and have been doing this for years. You don't really lose anything from that, but maybe just like a little bit of an ego dip, you know? And risk, I think, often pays off more if you're willing to take whatever comes from that, right? So, like, if they say no, what else could I do, right?
When a door closes, another one opens up, right? An exit leads to another entrance. And where you see failure, it's an opportunity for something because it opens you up for other facets of life and other novelty, right? If you didn't get to do this, you can do this other thing. And then there's going to be sacrifices and all that, because if you spend your time in that, then you won't be able to do this. And it's just aligning your actions with their values, right? Is this truly what you want to do? And that's like a lot of self-reflection. Now, with all the possibilities in sports, in even getting your degree, why did you choose these fields such as psychology, rugby, and wrestling? Was there some underlying factor or thing that you're looking for? Or is it the feeling?
So psychology is a funny one because I was either going to go into U of A for Eng or go for Faculty of Arts. And that's because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, I really liked math in high school, and like I really liked like the hard sciences in high school. But like something really fascinated me about things like philosophy and things like the mind, right? So I ended up going into open studies arts for my first year of U. And then I just tried out like a ton of different courses. Like I did some like ancient history courses. I was in like a few Ukrainian classes, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, biology. Like I just pretty much took everything that I could. And I've always liked psych, and neuroscience is probably more where I lie on that, just because I realized I really like the biological side of things, but I didn't realize that until like my third year. But just learning about what makes us tick, that's where I found a lot of joy, right? And like the material. So then eventually, like, I declared a major for psych in arts, and then I declared a minor in art and design because that's something that I really enjoyed throughout high school. And then I switched it again to biology, and then I switched it again to math, and then I switched to faculty of science, still in psych because you're able to do psych. And then I decided to go into the honors program because I was like, actually, I can't figure out what I want to minor in. Like, I might as well just like stick to one thing. And that's pretty much where I found my peace with it. I was like, okay, at some point you just have to make a decision, and then you have to like roll with the punches. And a psych degree, you can actually do a lot of different things, and you can pretty much customize it to the courses you like. So I've been fortunate enough to like take things that I really enjoy taking while still fulfilling all of the credits that I need for the degree.
That's incredible. You had tried all these different subjects, and you you really ensure that you try all of it to ensure that you decide on the thing that you truly want. And like, you try all these things, and I hear people that say, to truly know what you want, you throw shit at the wall and you see what sticks, right? And just with the mind too, I think it's just the most powerful force to really what gets invented and what propels us to do the things that we do. It's in the mind with the psychology, hey, and you try to do and explain all these things, and it's all there. And kind of what do you want out of this degree? What do you want to do with the what's that called? After the degree, you're going into your master's, right?
Yeah.
So are you going into your PhD after, or is that something you want to do?
Okay, so before March, I was like, well, I'm actually going to take a full 5 years for my bachelor degree and finish that. And that way I can do like 4 years of eligibility for rugby wrestling and enjoy it that way. And then I can take time off, or if I end up being fortunate enough to go like higher level in either sport, I could do that. But in March, I got like a really cool opportunity to do a master's in textile science, pretty much combining psych with faculty of medicine and like creating like a smart garment for people. And like I get to think of like a neurological disease, right, that I want to target, and like a demographic of people, and fit that in and do like a multidisciplinary project there, which is like super exciting. And I was like, oh, like this is a really cool idea. So I took that offer. And then they reopened the graduate studies portal because at that point it was already closed and all that. Which is why I'm starting in January instead of like starting in like a regular time period for people that start their masters. The tricky thing with that is like there's every rose kind of has its thorn. I don't really know what I'm doing afterwards, right? Now that I'm going that route with the masters, because like pretty much throughout like the last couple of years, you like slowly get an idea about what you want to do. And neuropsychology was something that really interested me. And that's like, it takes 7 years to specialize in it, and then finish like your postdoc and then work with patients. So that's kind of where I was headed. Or like even I was considering doing the MCAT to try and go into psychiatry, to try and like integrate ways to add like psychological methods to being able to administer medication, because like in a lot of ways medication helps a lot of people, but there seems to be a disconnect between therapy for people without medicine and like cognitive behavioral sort of thing and the medication that people are getting, which I feel like if you can figure out a way to link those things together, it could help a lot of people out, right? Because again, like medication helps a lot of people. And those options are still available. It's just after a little bit more time. So this way, like with doing the material science masters, I might get like some sort of opportunity through that. Like I'll get to meet a lot of people. I'm going to be working with like a lot of people from a lot of different faculties, right? So anyone from like artificial intelligence to engineering to working with groups of like for example, like Parkinson's disorder, right? So you get like a lot of exposure to a lot of connection there. So I'm aware that like you could get sort of opportunities from that, and I'm open to that. However, if that doesn't pan out, then I'm kind of going back to like that original idea of like pursuing a master's in either psychology or like psychiatry, which again has the drawback of you're starting a career a little bit late, but I'm not too worried about that because like once you're settled in a career, you're kind of in that career, and you might as well take time to actually figure out what you like and things that you're passionate about than to worry otherwise. But that's also just knowing that sports has a little bit of a timeline to it, right? And I can't be doing the stuff that I'm doing now forever. So I'm just trying to like stay in the present with what I'm doing.
And you're still so young. There's all these different routes that you could take.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And at 22, you've achieved a lot. You didn't take a gap year at all?
No, I didn't take a gap year. I like went straight.
Just go.
Straight into my degree. Yeah.
But that's fascinating to hear about all the different routes that you could take and all these different interests and the people that you want to work with and the different ideas that you have. That the uncertainty of it is just truly remarkable, hey, because you don't know where you're going to end up 5-10 years later, but it's just that trying every single day and trying this and then trying that and seeing where that takes you. And that's just something that I wonder about, where it's like 5 years from now, I don't know where I'm going to be, but
Exactly.
I know that if I try every single day, then it's going to be something beautiful. Can you share any specific practices or habits you follow to maintain a sense of gratitude and happiness, even during challenging times?
I think I put on there, like, when I'm tired, I usually do some sort of like meditation or non-sleep deep rest practice to kind of, I don't know, remember that I can stay in the present in a lot of times. And otherwise, it's kind of just like this idea of it's okay if you're not able to put in 100% effort every single time, as long as you know, like, you're showing up, right? So building those habits are almost more important than like being able to give 100% every time. Of course, you want to give 100% every time, right? And that's the reason that you're there. But like, what about those days where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, like this, like I had like a shit sleep and I have a million assignments to do. And all of a sudden, like, my coaches are like stressing me out on all this. And like, I don't actually want to do anything anymore, right? It's kind of just like taking that second and like giving yourself a little bit of grace, being like, you know what, like, just show up and take it from there. And when you're showing up and you're doing those things, then cool. I know there's like a point in time where I almost quit rugby, right? Because like I wasn't enjoying it, right? And I had to take a step away from it. And that also like helped me have more gratitude towards the sport again, right? Like actually removing yourself from the situation completely. So it really depends. Like, it's a give and take.
Sometimes you have to take that step back, hey, and give yourself a little bit of grace, and just sure, you can put all this pressure on yourself, but at the same time, showing up can really mean the difference of moving forward or the difference of quitting, because there's going to be those days where you just don't want to do it. Right? You don't want to show up to that practice, you don't want to study, you don't want to do anything, but it's those days that are the most important, because on those days where you do want to do it, it makes it so much easier. And sure, it's a passion and maybe you're interested in it, but yeah, it's not just going to be 100% every day. And it's in moving forward despite the chaos that erupts in the mind. It can be so intense, and it can be really, really heavy, but then you feel so good after, right? And in the short term, it's your success is determined by your intensity, but in the long term, it's defined by your consistency. Are you going to show up on those days where you don't want to? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, it's
and yeah, when you want to quit, let's per se, you said rugby. How do you go about that? Do you weigh out the pros and cons? Do you look at an alternative? Like, what makes you not want to quit, or what makes you keep going? How does that?
So rugby was kind of like an interesting situation because it was something that I was doing for a really long time, and obviously, like, I really enjoyed it. And before COVID, I was going to a lot of like Canada identification camps, right? Like, I was getting scouted per se, right? I was like making like long lists of rosters, right? That was essentially like the bottom stair of the staircase to making a national team, but it's like I was on the staircase, you know? So I was getting pretty excited about that. But at that point, like I was almost playing the sport to try and make the national team, if that makes any sense. So like a lot of my motivation for the sport kind of came from how other people perceived my play and the way I was playing,
You
and then all of the
prioritize the result.
validation. Yeah, I was essentially playing for the result, and I was getting like a lot of validation from that. But then I started getting injured a lot, and then COVID hit, right? And then I wasn't like getting the same validation that I was beforehand after that, right? And then I didn't feel myself improving, and I didn't find myself enjoying the practices, and I found that like there's a lot of resentment towards people around me that I shouldn't have resented for any reason, right? Because they're all doing their own thing. And that's kind of when I knew I needed to take a step back, if that makes any sense. So like COVID kind of took away like the main scouting years in my head. Like it at the time it was a big deal because I was like, damn, like this is like actually taking all of this away from me. Like I worked for so long for this to happen, and like here was my chance, and now like this pandemic just took it all, right? And like I committed so much time and I committed so much effort, and like a lot of my social life is like very ingrained in this thing, and like now COVID is just taking it away. So I was really angry about that. And then I started like backpacking a lot over the pandemic, and that was always something like my family, not so much backpacking, but like my parents did a lot of like ultra running when I was growing up. So I was like around trails quite a bit, and like at times like my mom would like throw me into a run at like 4 a.m. or something like that in the mountains. So I had like a little bit of experience there, and I kind of went back to that, and I was like, oh my God, like there's this whole other thing that I really enjoy doing, right? So I started finding love in other things, and then I would like get injured in sport, and whether or not that was like a knee injury, a hand injury, a head injury, and then I would just get angry about it, and at like some point I just stopped showing up to practice, or I stopped playing, or I stopped like taping up like a thumb injury and saying like I couldn't play anymore. I couldn't like practice anymore because like this piece of my body was hurt, right? But in the back of my head, like I kind of knew that I would probably push through those sorts of things if I like truly was enjoying it in the moment. So all of those things put together kind of told me, okay, you kind of have to take a step back and like take a step away. And then I took a summer off at the end of my second year. And that was probably like the best decision I could have made for the sport, because it was the first summer that I took off probably since I started playing. So that's like 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
like the summer months are like the main ones for scouting. They're the main ones for club. And it was like a really big deal at the time. And I remember my coach saying like a lot of people, if they do that, like they're not making it back on the team. Like we're not letting them back on the team. And I was like, nope, like it's something that I got to do. If we can make peace with it later, then that would be great. But like this is actually like something I need for myself.
You have to do what's best for you, because you were at a breaking point and you had prioritized the results instead of the process. And when you do that, showing up every day for the training, for the practice, makes it so much heavier, because 99% of any endeavor, it's the process. And if you don't enjoy that, then prioritizing the results can really take away from your autonomy and being able to take that step back and liberate yourself from the mental confusion and changing your mental framework and recalibrate, right, has really helped you, it seemed. And that was the right move.
Yeah.
How has your perspective on happiness and contentment evolved through your experiences in sports and academics?
I think that kind of goes back to like the first question about gratitude, I think it was, right? Or like finding happiness in like everyday life when I get super busy. It's like actually doing things that you like to do. So like if you don't like doing what you're doing, why are you doing it, you know? Or if you can't find like a part or a piece or understand that like what you're doing is going to make you happier in the long run, why are you doing it? Um like with wrestling, yeah, it kind of sucked having like the shit knocked out of me every single practice. Like not going to lie, like that was really really difficult, you know? Um but like there was still like a really like large piece of me that loved aspects of that, right? I loved the way I felt afterwards. I loved the people. I loved the progress that I was like very very slowly making, right? And like proving to myself that I was able to do something. And then for rugby, it's doing it for fun now. Like because now like this is the first summer I've kind of come back to doing club over um I don't know, like the summer months. I was saying summer way too many times there, but um and I'm only doing club, so I'm wasn't like gonna go on any of the rep teams because I didn't want to stress myself out, right? I really enjoyed playing and I'm playing well now um throughout like the varsity season, so I kind of wanted to continue that and just like have fun with the people and enjoy all of the parts of the sport that I loved before I started playing for results, right? And then kind of just going back to the little moments like um, hanging out with people after games at the clubhouse or being able to go on road trips or for wrestling, like usually like we book an Airbnb when we go on trips and everyone cooks together, right? So there's a lot of community also there. And then with academics, like if you're going to be spending so much time learning things, why don't you spend that time learning things that you actually are interested in and like actually enjoy doing? Because there's jobs for people that are good at what you do, and generally you're good at things that you're passionate about because you're sinking more time into it and more effort into it, right? And you want to learn about those things. So it kind of goes into that idea of where there's a will, there's a way, right? Do things that you're interested in and then kind of trust that good will come out of those moments. And you know what? If there aren't any jobs for whatever reason, you kind of use the skills that you worked so hard at obtaining, like during all of that other time that you don't hate about, or like you don't hate because you were doing things that you liked, and use those in a practical application later on.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an issue out there where people do not like their occupations, and if you ask the average person if they like their jobs, majority of people say no. If I didn't have to worry about money, then I wouldn't be here. And a lot of them are actually very decent at their jobs. But imagine if they were actually passionate about it. Imagine that. Hey, a person that is doesn't like their job, but they're decent at it. Imagine a person that's truly passionate about it. And it's just cultivating that passion and going with what's fun. Because over time, you can turn that into a job. And I think you and I are still fairly young, so I don't know if this is as credible as being in like, let's say 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity out there. There's like a job for everyone, right? And maybe it may not be your ideal one, but you can be as closest to the vision that you have for yourself as possible, right? And if that's not the case, you quit that job, you find something else. But then again, there are people who need the money for whatever reason, and it's just there's always something to be thankful for, though, because maybe that job, okay, it adds you don't like it as much, but it provides you a lifestyle that puts food on the table, that puts a shelter over your head, and you have access to clean water. And that's finding the little things, as you said, and then going back to the basics where, okay, maybe you're too focused on this one aspect, you divert and you go, okay, I'll readjust my mental framework. Rugby's not for me in this mental framework. Maybe I got to think about my teammates. Maybe I got to think about what made me happy when it came to rugby or the school aspect. Because I see this in students too, where in the beginning, they're so fired up. I'm going to learn so much, but then they place too much emphasis on the exams and they forget that, hey, they're there to learn. You're there to learn and have a good time. You're not there to think 6 years down the road when you're going to write the MCAT or when you're going to do this big thing. No, it's like the little things every day. And it's the constant self-reflection, the constant self-introspection that liberates us and recalibrates us to align our actions with our values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, I think even if like you do enjoy something, but you're not going to put like a lot of the work in to actually like learn the skills that properly equipped you to do that thing, it's easy to start disliking it, or it's easy to kind of get caught into like that framework that you're talking about where you're not like really enjoying your job, or like you're unsure on why, right? Like that effort piece is super important to actually get where you want to go or start enjoying like the little things, even if you don't love the work as much, right? You could tell that like you really enjoy interviewing and getting to know other people. I feel like
I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much.
How often do you integrate like other people's stories into like the way that you think?
Actually, I listen to my own podcasts a lot.
Really?
Before it gets released, I listen to it 1 or 2 times over to ensure that there's no flaws, or to make sure that it's as presentable as possible. And I like to just learn, because after it's fully recorded and I've done all the editing, then my mind, it feels so clear. Like I feel like, oh, it's such a relief to be able to put it out there, and I'm a listener after. So
okay.
it's been, yeah, I take a lot of notes and little pieces I extract from the guests, because everybody's got something like this. The mental framework thing, like that's something that I already have it reinforced in myself, but like talking to you, that's something that I want to ask myself maybe later on after I'm editing, like, maybe I'm focusing too much on like the analytics and what, like the school aspect, and just the self-introspection side of things and how people work is truly magnificent. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Embracing new opportunities.
Okay,
what
topic
motivates
2.
you to embrace new opportunities, whether in sports, academics, or areas in your life?
I would say I am addicted to learning things. So that could be like a podcast, or that could be like changing a minor about 17 million times, or a major a couple times as well. So I feel like when it comes to a new opportunity, I'm like, oh my God, like something that I haven't done before. Okay, yeah, like I need to do it right now. Because maybe like I can take something away that I didn't have before, and like you can pick up that like new perspective that you found on the ground, and then you can like add it to like your basket or whatever, and then all of a sudden like you have a bunch of new things in your basket that you didn't have before, right? And then you can like take that home with you. That makes sense?
That makes
It's like
sense.
a little
You
bit
have
of an
all these
abstract
different
analogy.
little tools. Like maybe the metaphorical hammer is your way of planning meals, in that meal prep, maybe that metaphorical screwdriver tool can ensure that you self-introspect and you dial in your sleep. Does that,
exactly,
and then there's this little
exactly.
basket, and you're just, which tool can I use in those times where I feel doubt, fear, insecurity, or even in times where I feel great? Which tools can I use during this time? And
Pretty
every
much.
day it's different. But speaking of embracing new opportunities, would you ever run a marathon?
Run a marathon?
Yeah.
It depends what type.
August 20th.
August 20th,
I signed you up.
like this year?
Yeah.
Like this year?
Couple months from now.
Oh, okay, wait.
Month or-
Let me check if I have a tryout on August 20th. Is that
Actually,
is this
it's on a
bad
Sunday.
that
It's on the 18th.
on the 18th? How long's the marathon again?
42.2 kilometers.
42.2. Okay.
It's it is on the 18th.
It's on the 18th.
Yeah. I think you could do it. Let's train up.
Okay. Actually, that's a Sunday. I have tryouts the day before and the day after. I probably could.
Would you fit in a marathon? I don't know.
Well, okay, I would die. Here's the thing. I'll
your
run
tryout
5K.
the next day, you'd be really messed up.
Okay, it depends what tryout though. That's what I mean. So I gotta figure out what type of tryout it is, right? And then if it's a contact tryout instead of sprinting, I would try it. I would block half of it probably.
You got my number now.
I'm a terrible runner if I'm being completely honest with you. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I open that to everyone. I think new opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, how long does it take to run a marathon? 5 hours?
For beginners, yeah. 5 to 6
so
hours.
So it'll take me 7. Nice. Okay.
No, it'll take you 5 to 6.
5 hours? Okay. No, I take forever to run a 5K.
Oh, you'd be surprised. It's all mine. You've already established that you can get into a master's program, that you can be a dual sports athlete and still keep up with school. Just apply that same mindset to marathon running.
Oh no, that's why I'm thinking. That's why I'm actually just thinking about it. I'm actually thinking about doing it the day in between my 2 tryouts. I'm okay, if I walk it or half jog it or maybe a decent jog, maybe I won't be absolutely dead the next day.
Oh, you will.
Oh, I will. Okay, nice. Okay.
Can you share a specific instance when you took a leap into something new and how it impacted your personal growth?
Okay. I am going to not talk about the wrestling thing because that's an obvious one, right? Contact the coach into a new sport, right?
It's up to you.
Okay. So after I pretty much tore this thing called the ulnar collateral ligament. There's multiple in my thumb from rugby. It kind of sucked. So there's kind of a scar, right?
Let's see. Not really. It's not that visible. Kind of just blends in.
It's not that visible.
I see the outline now that you pointed it out though.
Well, here's the thing. It was below the surface tissue. So I tore everything below. So it's kind of funny that there's a scar there. Anyways, and I pretty much used that not as an excuse not to train at all, but I was I can't do anything in rugby. I can't do anything in wrestling. All I can do is sit out and watch people. And that's obviously not the case when you really think about it, because even if you have a plastic thing on your hand, you can still run, right? You can still do one-handed things, right? You can still kick. There's a lot of things that you can do at that time, but I pretty much at that point chose not to because I was not enjoying anything I was doing. And when my rugby team was playing in BC, I was sad about it, obviously, because I wasn't in BC because of my hands. So then I went to Nordegg, and then I met the manager at the time, of a place called Gila Ventures. And in junior high, like we always used to do like outdoor ed trips.
Grade 7.
Yeah.
I was Aussie, oi, oi, oi.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if I don't know if that was their theme or it was just because the guide was Australian.
I think that was because the guide was Australian.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard like an Aussie thing there since, but
Okay.
I didn't
that was
really...
like Gila. That was like an Australian. Okay, but go
Well,
on.
actually, fun fact, the name Gila is because the two owners are named Henry and Lana, and they put their names together and pretty much like built that company from the ground up.
Wow.
So it's like a really cool company. But he used to be a wrestler and used to be in the wrestling community. His name was Brett, like the manager of the place. And he pretty much said that there was like a cooking job available if I wanted to live out there for the summer. And at the time I was like, oh, no way. Like, I would never do that. Like, it's not something that I do in the summer. I play rugby in the summer.
And this is the result because your hand, it was acting up and you didn't want it to... You could have still done it, but the passion and you used the kind of the hand thing just as an excuse.
Yeah, like it was more just like, okay, well, my hand's going to be fixed by May, right? Or should be fixed by May. So I could theoretically like play rugby all summer, you know? But like a piece of me didn't really want to. And I was actually talking to my aunt about it and she's like, why wouldn't you do that? And I was like, well, like I can't, like I do rugby. Like that's something I do. That's like a very like instilled part of my identity. And she's like, well, like you've been complaining about it for the past 4 months. And I'm like, okay, actually, like maybe you have a point. So then I contacted them and then I decided to go work there. Thing was like I didn't know anyone that was working there. I also even though like I moved out at 19, my diet has pretty much like consisted of like instant noodles and anything like I can microwave at the time. Like it was not great. Like I wasn't a great cook that year.
Well, that's the university lifestyle.
Yeah, it's the university lifestyle and like I was like a shit cook. So I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to bake. I didn't know anyone there. And it was something that I've never done before in my life. And like I was moving away from everyone that was like my support system at the time. And then I pretty much like learned about a new type of culture and learned about things that people like to do with their time. Like there was a lot of people that were really cool. They had been doing like kayaking and canoeing for years and years and years. And that was something that they were very passionate about. There's people very passionate about climbing and going outdoors. And Brett, he wrote a book. It's a really good book. If anyone's into scrambling, FYI. And it's like a scramble guide for the entire Nordic area. So I got the book and pretty much started like checking off different scrambles.
Like scrambled eggs?
Sorry?
Scrambled eggs?
Not eggs. Oh, okay. Sorry, anything... I'm so scatterbrained. No, I'm not talking about cooking at all. Right now I'm talking about like hikes. So like there's there's like hiking and then there's scrambling, and scrambling is pretty much almost a combination of climbing and walking. Right.
Okay, so right now we're at the Gila.
Yeah, we're
so let me just summarize everything.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That hand injury led you to lose a little bit of passion, and it was already happening at the time. And so you went to Gila Venture.
Yes. And
this is where you for the first time ever, you were alone, no friends, no family.
Yeah.
And you had to learn new things, including scrambling.
Yes.
And you had mentioned cooking, so that's why I just assumed scrambled eggs because he had wrote a book about scrambled. Okay.
I became really good at scrambled eggs. Okay, not gonna lie, like I made bomb scrambled eggs by the end of that summer.
Okay, but scrambled in this sense is just like a physical activity.
Yeah, scramble. It's like not with the D at the end. It's just like the word scramble. It's physical activity.
What is it?
But I was
in hiking. Is that just like HIIT training or
like hiking like up a mountain. So
okay.
so scrambling up a mountain, like you're going to the top of the mountain, hiking up a mountain, you're trying to like go to the
I've
top
just
of the
never
mountain.
heard of that term.
Oh
Yeah, that's the first time I've come across
yeah,
a term like that.
And my linear thinking really helped the conversation.
No,
It really helped you follow, I'm assuming.
Like it wasn't scattered at all. I was just lost at scrambled. But like go on with your story.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So long story short, or long story long, I like picked up new hobbies from that, but also learned the skill of cooking because that was my job there. And all of this was completely away from the community that I had been a part of for years and years and years. And on top of that, like at the beginning, I was really, really bad at my job, of course. So like the two people I was working with were kind of like, okay, like she doesn't know how to cook, she doesn't know how to bake, like, and now we have to work with her for the rest of summer and live with her because we all live like in the same area. So that was like a little bit of an interesting situation in itself to navigate, right? Kind of like that, okay, now I'm here and now I'm actually completely alone. And now I actually have to like learn these skills by myself and I'm behind all of these other people, right? So that makes you a little bit more humble going back into situations where you're a little bit more comfortable. But I went back the following year and pretty much like got like my canoeing certifications and got my like wilderness first aid certifications and like did all that stuff because it was a new thing that I learned about myself that I really, really enjoyed doing. And all of my free time now, like if I have the opportunity, like chances are I am somewhere in the mountains and I will just like, I'll go on a backpacking trip because now I know all of the things that I need to pretty much do that on the fly, or like I have books where I can like navigate myself through those situations because like those are things that you learn through the people that you surround yourself with and the activities that you're doing in the moment. So that was probably like one of the most salient experiences that I put myself in just because it was so different than what I had been doing for so long. And I would argue it has completely changed my perspective on the way I view sports, the way I view school, the way I view like my relationships with people. So like I have a lot of gratitude towards that and I can't say enough good things about that place.
It's fascinating. Had this injury or even that loss of passion didn't happen, then you wouldn't have discovered this your lessons
Scrambled
with
eggs.
Cooking and scrambling,
Yeah.
scramble and hiking and like living alone. And now you take the lessons from there and now you use it in other facets of life.
Pretty much, yeah.
How do you assess and decide which opportunities to pursue, especially when they might take you out of your comfort zone?
So if I know it's going to benefit me or if I'm doing something that I usually don't do, that's like a green light for me to do it, right? The way that I kind of see opportunities are they're all around you if you go for them. So like when I wasn't enjoying sports, I was looking at ways that I could save it but enough money or like look at scholarships to finish my degree in New Zealand. And I was looking into like exchange programs to do that this coming year. But then I started like really enjoying sports and noticing like a lot of good things come out of that, right? So when you start like accomplishing things in your everyday life, right? Or you see yourself moving forward in the things that you're doing, it makes sense to continue doing them, in my opinion, right? And if you feel stagnant, then that's like the opportunity to search out things that will make you move forward or expose you to new experiences. And if new experiences arise out of you moving forward in your everyday life, well, then that's where like the pro and con list comes from. Like, for example, do I go back to Gila this summer, or do I continue research and train for a bunch of things this summer? Because I noticed like this year went really, really well for me, right, with sports. And like, for example, like I chose to stay here this summer sort of thing, right? Because everything in my life in that area has been going so well. So I might as well just ride it out and enjoy the moments and pretty much live in the present. But just always kind of keeping an open mind there, I think, is important.
Well, there's all these different choices, hey, all these different routes, and you kind of just go with what feels right. And as kind of cliche, cheesy as that may sound, that's really all we can do. As long as you try your best with every single day, and when you make a decision, you follow through with it. Because you won't really know unless you actually undergo both things at the same time, which you can't. Because if you did go to Gila this summer, then you wouldn't know what it would have been like if you had stayed. Then if you had, like, if you stay right now, you don't know what it would have been like to go to Gila. Right? And you just go, okay, I had a good time when I went during that time, and you just weigh out the pros and cons. But then there is like the family, and then there's the friends, and I won't be able to practice for rugby, wrestling, and then there's also just being close in Sherwood Park, and then there's all these different variables. But as you said, it's kind of trying all these different things, but it's making that decision, right? Because people get into this like analysis paralysis type deal.
Hey, I'm usually there.
Yeah, I'm there too. It's like, I may take that route, but then it's going to lead to this, then it's going to lead to that, and then I won't be able to do this. Is that going to cut in with my sleep? Do I really need sleep? Am I going to, if I learn this, I won't have time to learn that. If I spend time with my family on Sunday, I won't be able to go to do this. It's like, there's all these different things, but just make a decision, right?
Yeah, and also like be happy with the decision, because like I think a lot of the time, like a couple years ago or whatever, something that I've been really trying hard to do now, is like getting the things out of the decision I make. Like I make the decision, okay, cool. Like, so stop worrying about what could have been, right? Like stop worrying about like what opportunities you're missing out on, right? If you're choosing to do something, like take the joy out of that thing that you're choosing to do. And if it sucks, okay, take the things that sucked about it and learn from them, and you can use it that way. But either way, like if you make a decision, there's no point in not being present in that moment. Because then all of a sudden you're not going to enjoy either thing.
Yeah. There's a lesson even in those times where you do fail. And segueing into embracing failure, like how do you handle failures or setbacks in your sports and academic pursuits, and what have you learned from them?
I mean, like, I think it depends on what failure you're talking about, right? Because like in the moment you can be super angry, and then like later on you can be super grateful. So it's almost like that emotional versus that analytical standpoint on things, right? Failure's really, really good because you learn from it, and it sucks in the moment. For me, like with wrestling, like I lost every match that I did for the first year, and like the first competition that I won this year was CanWest. Which is like that's a really big competition, but like that's after like however many hours and hours and hours and hours you put in, and you get beat up and then you cry about it. Or like you put in the hours and you put in the effort and you try your hardest, and then you mess up on something stupid that you've been working on not messing up on for like 20 hours prior, right? So you beat yourself up about that. So it's super easy to like get caught in this perpetual like I'm angry about this. I'm angry, like, this could have been better. Like, I could have been better here. I could have been better here. But knowing that prior to those moments where you get results, knowing that you put in the work is almost enough, right? And then knowing that you've learned from times that you've messed up, and knowing that even if you fail, like, it sucks in the moment, but in one way or another, you're going to be grateful for it later on because you've learned something from it, and then new opportunities will come out of it.
It's not about how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit, fall down, and keep getting back up. Those failures you had gone through in wrestling, if you just quit, then what? Then you wouldn't have seen yourself win the Can-Am, you said?
Oh, it's just like, it's Can West. It's like
Can
a
West.
university, university competition.
Okay, well, you went through all these competitions where you had failed.
Yeah.
You were defeated. But in those failures, you learned something. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have gone through that move. Maybe I shouldn't have done this mental framework attitude. Maybe I shouldn't have used that. Maybe my sleep wasn't as good. Maybe it's the diet. And actually, I came across this idea where you'd actually derive and learn much more from the people that fail because they're constantly thinking about what went wrong, and then they continuously fail. And if it's the people that do try again, but the people that do succeed right away, they don't really know what worked. Like, sure, they put in all that, but they just revel in the glory.
Well, it's kind of like you almost create like a science out of it, right? From trial and error, right? Like the only reason that we know anything is because, like, we tried something, we wrote down what we did, and then we're like, oh man, like, this didn't work. Okay, like, let's try another thing, but like, just change like this one aspect, like this tiny amount. Okay, like, it still didn't work like that. Okay, let's completely change it. Oh, like, something like super random happened and it worked. Okay, why did that work? Okay, let's take moments and work backwards to figure out what procedure, what methodology, like, is behind everything that created the result that can move you forward afterwards. Right? So whether that's like a coincidence or whether that's like a trial and error approach, like, in both situations, you might get a result that you're looking for, a result that you're not looking for, but you kind of have to take time to reflect and either change or reflect and be like, okay, this worked. How do I keep on doing it?
Yeah. Eventually, you reach a solution after continuously just tweaking the formula. Okay, is it this? Is it that? Okay, maybe it's this move right here. Maybe I got to orient myself better. Maybe it's the breathing. You focus on the breathing. Okay, it's not the breathing. And then something works, and you're trying to, like, analyze everything, and then eventually you hone in and you keep on doing that thing that works, and eventually you figure it all out. But then again, a failure comes, and then you do the same process. And that's just, people, when they think of failure, when they experience it, it's so heavy and it's so ingrained in our psyche to be aversive to it. It really holds so many people back. But a failure is formative. It's not final. It's only final if you quit.
Hey, that's a good analogy. That was like a really good.
No, it's not original, but
oh, okay.
But I think a lot of the ideas out there are they're there and they've been constructed, and it's just taking these ideas and living them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I could say, hey, failure, it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. But then if I actually experience it and I don't practice what I preach, then it's like, no, I got to be able to use the things that I've learned and put it into use.
Yeah. I think it also, like, helps with connecting with other people as well, right?
Yeah. I think the AC went. Let me just double check that real quick. Let me just Got one button. There we go.
Oh,
Just randomly shut off.
My AC is off in my apartment right now.
Yeah.
And like last night, I think, I think I had it. It was like 3 a.m. And I'm like, okay, like I should not be laying in like a puddle of sweat right now. Like this is disgusting. But there was hot air blowing from the thermostat.
Just makes it
or the
even more
furnace.
hot.
What?
Yeah. Just 10 times hotter.
I know it was.
Is.
And I was like, okay, maybe I can open a window. Oh no, there's a heat warning. Like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, we need the AC in the July and August. I wonder, it's not that hot in June, hey? When that is the summer solstice. See, I'm not well versed in that, so I don't really know.
well,
But, yeah.
let's find a summer solstice expert and get them on the show.
We
Like,
might. Yeah, we
can
have
learn a
to.
little bit. But no, it usually like snows in June, which is really unfortunate.
In June?
Yeah,
Or-
didn't it snow like 3 times this June? Or
Did
maybe I'm like losing it.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if in Sherwood Park, I don't know if, yeah, rained a lot. I don't know about snow. Maybe I just haven't been outside much.
Fair enough.
Can you describe a significant failure you faced and how it ultimately contributed to your success or personal development?
I am going to. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about the wrestling thing again. So like the person that I ultimately ended up like winning against in Can West, I lost to her 4 or 5 times beforehand. Throughout the year, right? Like pretty much I would go into the competition and then I would get like the shit kicked out of me and then I would like get really angry about it because I'm like, I've been practicing this, like this is ridiculous. And then I would go back and then it got to the point where I would like pretty much like only be practicing one move because I'm like, okay, like I gotta get this move. And then like I would go against her again and then I got like a high ankle sprain, right? 3 weeks before competition. And I was like, okay, and then I would lose again. And then I'm like, what's going on? So then like it got to the point where like I was like taping up my ankle like tenfold. So like I was using like Leuko tape, I was using hockey tape, I was using pretty much anything to hold my ankle together so I could train at this competition because I had fallen short so many times. And like before falling short that many of times or like however many times in those competitions, like the competitions before that weren't great either. I was losing in all of those and becoming like dead last in all of those. And then before that, like in rugby, like I would want to do well in a competition or like I would want to make like a national team and then I would like just get cut. Like I would like just get cut. So like I would have like all of these things where I get like super, super close, right? And then just fall short off of like one move or fall short off of like one sprint time or like one like aspect of a game or like of a match or whatever. So I guess it was less of like a one massive failure, but that combination of failures over time motivated me to pretty much put everything that I could into doing like technique on top of like all of the training and like constantly like working hard in rugby and like feeling like I need to do like everything that I could. And then at that point, like I was doing rugby and wrestling at the same time. So it was like very, very hectic. And I was like pretty much in like this crazy, crazy state where I would have like 4 practices a day. And then I finally won, which was awesome, right? And then I lost the match right after. And I lost the match right after, like immediately. And it was against a girl that people are like, oh yeah, you could totally beat her. And I was like, oh man, like I work so hard and I do all of these things and I feel like X amount of times and I finally like win and I have like this massive moment and then I lose against someone like right afterwards. Like this is ridiculous, you know? But I was still so excited. And it took me like a couple days because I was actually like really mad about it because I was like, okay, like even though it was a 3-way tie and I came out on top of that, I still felt this massive pit in my stomach because I'm like, I'm still behind. And it took me a couple weeks after that to be like, okay, like it's actually fine. Like you're actually making a little bit of progress. And then like the next competition went really well and I got second at national university thing, whatever. It's U Sport. So that went well. And then I lost again at U23 trials, like trying out for the world team, or like I got third instead of first, right? And you need to get first to get onto the world team there. So going back to that initial question on like one major failure, it's almost like if you fail a certain amount of times and like they're little failures, right? You stop noticing your progress and then you finally get to your goal. If you feel like a failure like right afterwards, it almost like takes out everything that you felt in that moment. And like even though you're not like rock bottom, it's like you feel disgusting, right? Like you feel like you've done nothing. And then it's almost just like picking yourself up after that and being like, okay, actually, like if I lose, it's okay. If I lose like a competition, like that's okay. If I lose a match, like that's okay. Like noticing like the little progressions that you're making is kind of what counts there.
You went through enormous, or if you add them all up, it's so much failure. But then it's so worth it to see it through the end and actually give it your best because you achieve those the triumphs. And had you not gone through those failures, you wouldn't have learned all these things. And you keep going despite all that anger, despite all that negativity, but you keep honing in the craft. Hey, you keep getting back up. And even with that injury that you experienced right before, it's just okay, you still show up. But not once did I hear you say you fleed and you didn't show up, because a lot of people, it gets really tense, especially when you're going up face to face with someone. It's really intimate and it's scary. Hey, it's really daunting. But that's amazing. Really brave of you. And a lot of people can't stomach getting beat up that many times. Eh?
Well, I mean, like, so that was like a sports example, right? But I feel like there's so many examples that like each person kind of faces in their day-to-day life, right? Whether or not that's like losing a job or like dealing with addiction of any sort, or like getting out of an abusive situation. Like there's so many situations that every person faces, right? And like even though like that's like a failure example from like a sports thing, it's probably something that everyone has kind of experienced and probably persevered throughout their life.
There's so many countless possibilities out there of the different personalities, the different people born into the different lives. And I always say, this is a chaotic world we live in, and things are bound to happen. Awful things, atrocities, your mental sanity, it could be just taken away from you. And I believe we all suffer in imagination than in reality. Actually, that's a quote by Seneca. And it rings true where, okay, this X happens, you lose your job, you go through this debilitating issue, cancer diagnosis, death of a loved one. How are you going to get out from this and learn from it? And it's going back in your history and going, okay, how have I persevered despite these things? And maybe it may not be worth the same as the thing that's happening right now, but I can use that same mindset that I used in sports, that I used in school, and I can persevere despite how awful things may get. Okay. And it's just something that I really wish everyone had. And I wish everyone could internalize that it's not just going to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
There's going to be days where you're going to wish you were dead, but it's those days where you got to persevere and you have to show up to the practices, where you have to show up to those relationships, where you have to show up to the gym, where you have to journal, you have to get out of bed. We weren't meant to just lay there all day and ponder and worry. No, we were meant to experience the problems, the dilemmas, getting slapped across the face, but then going, okay, it's another day. Let's go.
Yeah, it's true.
And learning from it. What advice would you give to others about viewing failures as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles?
I would say it really depends on like the situation that you're in, right? Because if someone is like, I don't know, like you can go through some really, really tough situations, right? Where it's almost impossible not to see it as an obstacle, or it's impossible for it not to scar you in some sort of traumatic way, right? So sometimes it's really difficult seeing those moments in growth. But probably just to get through it, right? Just get through it, and then sometimes you can think back on those moments and not even realize that they're helping you out later on. Long term, if you're able to get through it, then you're able to get through any other situation that's similar, any other situation that might be slightly worse, right? Like as soon as like you have those tools in your basket, if you're, or like whatever rocks you're picking up, they're there, you know? So there's just like a certain amount of trust that you have to have with yourself in those situations, that they will probably help you out in the long run if you choose to put the work in another aspect and actually like choose to pick yourself up at the end of the day, because you're the only person that really can.
No one's going to come and save you. Sure, there are friends and family members that do love you and they want you to do well.
Yeah, but it's not their job either.
It's not their job. Yeah.
Like, like it's really, it's comforting when people like you love and people who love you are able to stick out their necks for you and able to help you up and like pick you up when you're down. And like sometimes you do need that, right? Like, and you do need that connection, and you do need that feeling of, okay, like I'm not alone, right? But it's you at the end of the day.
The end of the day, you wake up with you go to sleep with you. Just you are you, and no one's gonna make you show up to the practice. No one's gonna make you be able to get over that breakup, that thing you're obsessing about, that bad grade. No one's gonna study for you. Sure, it's great to be there for friends and family, and we all need a support system. We all need to feel connected. But when it comes to persevering, when it comes to resilience, we really need to take accountability for that. And what works? Going to the gym, meditation. There's the honing on the sleep, change your diet. Maybe you should switch up your mental framework and take a step back and reflect. And there's all these different routes in life. And I firmly believe that we all know what's right for us, right? The tools are all there. In Canada, 2024, there's so much opportunity out there. And like, if you're scrolling through TikTok all day for 8 hours at a time, maybe you shouldn't do that, right? Maybe you are so resentful. Maybe you judge others too much and you're jealous all the time. Where is this coming from? There's books that you can read. There's different exercises that could alleviate the suffering in your mental space. There's all these things that can help us and that will help us if we choose that route. And certainly you have come a long way, and it's really brave of you to talk about your failures. And yeah, it's just, I am excited to see kind of how far you'll take this journey in life, and you have achieved a great deal at such a young age.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's truly fascinating, and it's really sobering to hear that, okay, there's this successful person talking, and they talk about the struggle, and because people these days tend to just really focus on the successes. Hey, what you see and kind of what really people want to talk about all the time is like the good times, but it's not life. It's not. Like, there's the bad times, right? What's the biggest coping mechanism, whether it be in your mental framework, whether it be meditation, whether it be an exercise that you engage in on those terrible days?
That depends. Like, if I'm going through like if something really rough happens, right, and I'm like really down in the dumps about it, I find like a circular pattern of thought kind of starts popping up. So that's when I like write a lot. And then once I write, like, then I can read back on the writing and be like, oh my God, like, you've been thinking about this a lot and you haven't really been thinking about much else, and it's been taking up like a lot of your brain space that you could totally be using for all these other cool things. But like in terms of things that I do to continue moving, it's pretty much just any sort of movement. So like, I'll make myself go for a run, or like I'll make sure I go to practice, or like I'll like pretty much make sure I am moving in some sort of way and doing something that I enjoy. That's kind of how I get through that. And if I hate practicing and if I hate moving, like, that's another thing completely. Still show up and then do something that I like to do afterwards, right? And then be like, okay, well, you did this practice. Oh my God, like, that's the greatest achievement in the world today. Good job. You get to do this now. And like, I find that also helps, right? And then trying to take out like the worry, and trying to remember to care about yourself at the end of the day. Like, those are important, and they go a long way.
That's fantastic. Thank you for coming on the long-term podcast.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, is there any last words to the listeners and viewers?
Oh, we should interview this guy.
Which guy?
Yeah, this guy.
Oh, yeah, me?
The host guy.
Yeah, whoever has a podcast, invite me on. No, I've got, like, if you listen to the podcasts, you'll get to know me if you have time, because this is episode 57, I believe.
57. Okay, yeah. Well, what makes you tick, Advin?
What makes me tick?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really like talking to people. I just like, I want to change this world. Like, I really just want to so bad. But then again, yeah, I got to approach those failures. I got to go through that grief of the camera not working, and the chaos of just the body recuperating after a long run, or like just all these things that I want to achieve, aligning my actions with my values. And as long as I stay true to that, then I can just keep ticking. But yeah, no, thank you so much.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
This is Maria Sawiak.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I never say it with the accent, but it's kind of refreshing to hear with the accent. Yeah.
For all of you listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope, strengthen your faith, and keep it long term. Peace. Oh yeah.